We are raised on a single, powerful promise: the belief that if you study hard, work long hours, and play by the rules, you will eventually build wealth. It is the foundation of the modern social contract. But if you look at the raw data, that promise begins to crumble. According to a comprehensive study by the Rand Corporation, since 1975, nearly $50 trillion of wealth has been systematically siphoned from the bottom 90% of earners and transferred directly to the top 1%. This was not an accident. It was not the invisible hand of the free market. It was the result of specific, calculated policy decisions designed to decouple your hard work from your financial reward. You have likely felt this shift in your own life. The sensation that you are running faster just to stay in the same place. You aren't imagining it. You are living through the most sophisticated wealth transfer in human history. The system isn't broken. It is working exactly as it was designed. And unless you understand the mechanics of that design, you will never escape it. To understand the magnitude of this trap, you have to look past the number on your paycheck. We are conditioned to believe that a high income equals wealth, that if you earn a six-figure salary, you have fundamentally made it. But in the modern financial architecture, income is a distraction. The real metric is purchasing power, and that has been quietly, methodically eroding for decades. Let us look at the data. According to the Economic Policy Institute, from 1979 to 2020, net worker productivity rose by 61.8%, but the hourly pay of typical workers grew by only 17.5%. This divergence is critical. It means that for nearly half a century, you have been working harder, producing more value, and becoming radically more efficient. Yet the rewards of that efficiency have not gone to you. They have been captured by capital. This gap is where your wealth went. But the system had to hide this decline in standard of living. If the average professional realized they were effectively becoming poorer with every passing year, the social contract would collapse. So, how did the architects of this system mask the reality? They introduced a two-pronged mechanism: deflation in distraction and inflation in necessity. While the cost of televisions, smartphones, and fast fashion plummeted, the cost of the actual pillars of a secure life, like housing, healthcare, and education, skyrocketed at rates far exceeding general inflation. In the 1960s, the median home price was roughly 2 to 3 times the median household income. Today, in many major metropolitan areas, that ratio has climbed to 7, 8, or even 10 times. The ladder to wealth hasn't just been pulled up, it has been dismantled. To bridge this widening canyon between stagnant wages and exploding costs, the financial industry offered a solution that looked like a lifeline but acted like an anchor. Easy credit. We replaced rising wages with rising debt. Today, total household debt stands at record highs. Not because people are suddenly irresponsible, but because the fundamental math of survival no longer balances. The system is effectively designed to keep you in a state of just enough to pay the bills, just enough to service the interest, but never enough to buy your actual freedom. This creates the phenomenon of the high earner, not rich yet. You aren't working to build a future, you are working to service the past. This state of perpetual financial anxiety isn't a bug in the software, it is the operating system. It keeps you compliant, it keeps you predictable, and most importantly, it keeps you showing up at 9 a.m. every single morning to contribute to someone else's compounding asset. Most people sense this trap intuitively. You feel it when you look at house prices or when you see how much of your paycheck vanishes before it hits your account. But what you probably don't know is that this specific outcome was predicted. In fact, it was engineered. To understand how to break these handcuffs, we have to go back to the moment they were forged. When I first started connecting these dots, I felt a distinct sense of vertigo. Like many of you, I spent years consuming standard financial advice. I read the books that told me to cut coupons, to stop buying lattes, to optimize my grocery budget down to the cent. I believed that if I wasn't building wealth, it was entirely a failure of my own discipline. I scrutinized my bank statements at 2 a.m., convinced that the reason I wasn't getting ahead was because of a streaming subscription or a dinner out. But when I finally laid the historical data over the economic reality, that guilt didn't just fade, it turned into anger. I realized I had been trying to out-budget a system that was mathematically engineering my stagnation. It was like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon while the captain drilled holes in the hull. The realization hit me during a deep dive into the Federal Reserve's own consumer finance data. The math simply doesn't work the way we were told it does. The rules I was playing by were written for an economy that ceased to exist in 1971. This is the part that keeps most people awake at night. It is that gnawing suspicion that you are doing everything right. You got the degree, you landed the job, you are working the overtime. Yet the goalpost keeps moving further away. You save for a down payment and house prices jump 20%. You get a raise and inflation swallows it whole. You feel like you are running on a treadmill that is slowly accelerating, and you are too exhausted to ask who is holding the controls. I want you to know that this exhaustion is not a symptom of your incompetence. It is a feature of the system. The financial industry thrives on your insecurity. If you believe your lack of wealth is solely due to your own poor choices, you will keep working harder, you will keep borrowing more, and you will keep paying fees to experts who promise to fix you. They need you to feel inadequate, so you remain compliant. But what happens when you stop looking at your spending habits as the problem and start looking at the architecture of the game itself? That is what we are going to do today. We are going to stop blaming ourselves for a moment and turn the spotlight on the machine. Because once you see the blueprint, once you understand that your financial struggle was manufactured in a boardroom decades ago, the shame evaporates, and in its place, you find the clarity to plot your escape. To find the smoking gun of this wealth transfer, we have to travel back to a specific window of time. While the erosion of the middle class feels like a slow, modern decay, the demolition charges were actually planted 50 years ago. If you look at almost any chart of economic well-being, whether it is wages, GDP share, or cost of living, the lines all break apart in the early 1970s. The first domino fell on August 15, 1971. President Richard Nixon appeared on television and announced the suspension of the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Overnight, money changed from a store of value backed by a tangible asset into a government fiat currency. This sounds like a technicality, but it gave the government the ability to print money at will. This introduced a hidden tax called inflation, which destroys the savings of wage earners while inflating the asset prices of the wealthy. But that was just the environment. It wasn't the weapon. The weapon was forged 2 months later in a confidential memorandum written by a corporate lawyer named Lewis Powell. On August 23, 1971, Powell sent a memo to the US Chamber of Commerce entitled Attack on American Free Enterprise System. In it, he argued that business was losing the war for public opinion and needed to aggressively organize to influence politics, the judiciary, and education. This wasn't a paranoid rant, it was a battle plan, and it worked. Corporate lobbying exploded. The goal was to rewrite the rules of the economy to favor capital over labor. But for this plan to be culturally accepted, they needed a new philosophy. Enter Milton Friedman. In 1970, Friedman published a doctrine that would become the gospel of Wall Street, the idea of shareholder primacy. He argued that a corporation has no social responsibility to its workers, its community, or the environment. Its only moral obligation is to increase profits for shareholders. Before this moment, companies generally operated on a stakeholder model. Profits were balanced between reinvestment, worker wages, and dividends. After Friedman, the logic shifted. Every dollar paid to a worker was viewed as a dollar stolen from a shareholder. This philosophy justified the freezing of wages we discussed earlier. But the architects of this new system still had a problem. It was illegal for companies to manipulate their own stock prices to enrich executives. That changed in 1982. This is perhaps the most critical turning point that nobody talks about. For decades, stock buybacks, where a company uses its cash to buy its own shares to artificially inflate the price, were considered market manipulation by the SEC. But in 1982, under the Reagan administration, the SEC passed Rule 10b-18. This obscure rule created a safe harbor for buybacks. Suddenly, corporate manipulation became returning value to shareholders. The impact was catastrophic for the American worker. Instead of using profits to increase wages or invest in innovation, companies began pouring trillions of dollars into buying back their own stock. This drove up share prices. which conveniently triggered massive bonuses for executives paid in stock options. It was a perfect closed loop of enrichment. The CEO cuts costs, suppresses wages, uses the savings to buy back stock, the stock price rises, and the CEO cashes out. You are not poor because you buy too many lattes. You are poor because the surplus value you create at your job is no longer shared with you. It is funneled into a financial engineering mechanism legalized in 1982. While they were rigging the upside, they were also dismantling your safety net. In 1978, a tax provision known as Section 401k was added to the Internal Revenue Code. It was never intended to be the primary retirement vehicle for a nation. It was a loophole. Yet, corporations saw an opportunity. They realized they could abolish defined benefit pensions, which guaranteed you a payout for life, and replace them with defined contribution plans, where you take all the risk. If the market crashes just before you retire, too bad. If you live longer than your savings last, good luck. They successfully transferred the liability of your survival from the company balance sheet to your personal bank account. If you are finding value in this history lesson, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are decoding the entire financial matrix episode by episode, and I don't want you to miss what comes next. So, by the mid-1980s, the trap was set. The money supply was unanchored, corporate philosophy had turned hostile to workers, stock buybacks were legalized to siphon profits to the top, and retirement security was privatized. The ladder wasn't just pulled up, it was fed into a wood chipper. But knowing the history is one thing, seeing how this machinery actively targets you in the present day is another. Because the system didn't stop evolving in the 80s. It got smarter. It learned how to weaponize your own psychology against you. And that is where the story gets truly dark. To understand how the machine operates today, we have to look away from the history books and look directly at the financial ecosystem you interact with every day. The system we live in operates on an extractionary model. It is designed to siphon wealth from the producers, that is you, and transfer it to the asset owners, that is them. This extraction happens through three specific mechanisms. They are invisible, they are legal, and they are embedded into the very infrastructure of your life. The first mechanism is the fee extraction engine. Most people believe the financial industry exists to help them grow their wealth. This is a fundamental misunderstanding. The financial industry exists to turn your capital into their revenue. They do this through the tyranny of small numbers. Consider the typical mutual fund or managed investment account. You might pay a fee of 1 or 2% annually. It sounds trivial. If you make a 10% return, you keep 8 or 9%. What is the big deal? But this is where the math hides the crime. That fee isn't taken from your profit. It is taken from your principal. Over an investing lifetime of 40 to 50 years, a 2% fee doesn't reduce your end wealth by 2%. According to data from the Bogle Financial Markets Research Center, it consumes roughly 63% of your potential returns. Let that sink in. You take 100% of the risk. You contribute 100% of the capital. Yet, because of the compounding effect of fees, the financial industry captures nearly 2/3 of the benefit. As John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, famously said, "In investing, you get what you don't pay for." The system is designed to graze on your savings, compounding their fees while you assume the market volatility. But while the investment industry clips your ticket on the way up, the second mechanism waits for you on the way down. This is the debt enslavement protocol. In a healthy economy, debt is a tool for production. A business takes a loan to buy a machine to make more products. In our current system, debt has been weaponized for consumption. The banks realized decades ago that the most profitable product they could sell wasn't a savings account. It was debt, specifically unsecured consumer debt. Today, the entire banking apparatus is incentivized to keep you in a specific Goldilocks zone of financial distress. They don't want you to go bankrupt because then they lose the principal. But they absolutely do not want you to pay off your balance because then they lose the interest. They need you to be a revolver, someone who carries a balance, pays the minimums, and services the debt forever. This is why credit limits are automatically increased when you show good behavior. It is why rewards points exist. It is gamification designed to keep you engaged with the credit cycle. When you pay 18 to 25% interest on a credit card, you are effectively working 1 week out of every month just to pay the bank for the privilege of having spent money you didn't have. This leads us to the third, and perhaps most insidious mechanism: psychological obsolescence. The economic system requires constant growth, but in a developed world, our basic needs like food, shelter, and clothing are easily met. To keep the machine running, corporations had to manufacture new needs. They had to colonize your mind. We are subjected to an estimated 4,000 to 10,000 commercial messages every single day. But this isn't just advertising, it is high-level behavioral modification. Modern marketing doesn't sell products, it sells identity. It sells the solution to the anxiety that the system itself created. They use a technique called neuromarketing, leveraging MRI scans to understand exactly which neural pathways trigger the dopamine response associated with purchasing. They know that the pain of paying is reduced when you use a plastic card or a digital wallet instead of cash. They know that buy now, pay later schemes bypass the brain's risk assessment centers. The result is a culture of performative wealth. We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. But this isn't a moral failing on your part. It is the result of billions of dollars spent on R&D to hack your decision-making software. The system is designed to make saving money feel painful and spending money feel like relief. So, here is the complete picture of the trap. On one side, your wages are suppressed by shareholder primacy. On the other side, your cost of living is inflated by housing and education bubbles. Any money you do manage to save is eroded by investment fees. And any gap in your budget is filled by high-interest debt, driven by psychological manipulation to keep you consuming. It is a perfect closed loop, a pincer movement on your net worth. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives fighting this battle without ever seeing the battlefield. They think if they just work a little harder, get that next promotion, or skip a few vacations, they will break free. But you cannot outwork a system that is mathematically rigged to extract your output. And that is not just a cynical statement, it is a mathematical certainty. Because when you actually run the numbers on what it takes to escape this gravity well using the standard path, the results aren't just discouraging, they are impossible. And that is exactly what we need to look at next. Because when you see the real numbers, the raw, unfiltered math of the modern American dream, you will realize that the game isn't just hard. It is over before you even start. It is time to look at the scoreboard. We have explored the history, we have exposed the mechanics, but the only thing that ultimately matters is the math. Numbers do not care about your political affiliation. They do not care about your optimism. They only care about the equation, and the equation of the modern American dream is broken. To prove this, we are not going to look at the extremes. We aren't looking at the minimum wage worker fighting for survival, nor the trust fund beneficiary. We are going to look at the success story, the person who did everything right. Let us introduce a test subject. Let us call her Sarah. Sarah is 32 years old. She is a marketing manager living in a standard metropolitan hub. Perhaps Austin, Denver, or Manchester. She earns $85,000 a year. By global standards, she is wealthy. By historical standards, she is an aristocrat. But let us run her life through the modern financial machine and see what comes out the other side. On paper, $85,000 sounds like a ticket to freedom. But the moment that money touches her account, the extraction begins. First, taxes. Federal, state, and FICA taxes immediately claim roughly 22%. Her monthly take-home pay is now roughly $5,500. Next, the cost of shelter. The standard financial advice, the rule of thumb written in the 1970s, says housing should cost no more than 30% of your income. But in the city where Sarah works, the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,200. That is 40% of her net income gone, just to have a roof. Then, the shadow of the past. Student loans. Sarah graduated with the average debt load for a master's degree holder, paying $400 a month. Add in utilities, internet, a modest car payment, insurance, groceries, and the occasional terrifying healthcare deductible. By the time Sarah reaches the end of the month, if she is disciplined, if she doesn't take vacations, doesn't buy the latest iPhone, and meal preps every Sunday, she might have $500 left over. This is where the financial advisor smiles and says, "Great, Invest that $500 into a diversified index fund, assume a 7% return, and you will be a millionaire. And this is where the math becomes a lie. Let us project Sarah's future. She saves $500 a month for 35 years. She retires at 67. At a 7% average annual return, the compound interest calculator says she will have roughly $830,000. Sounds fantastic, right? Nearly a millionaire. But here is the variable the calculator didn't show you: inflation. The Federal Reserve targets a 2% inflation rate, but real-world purchasing power erosion, especially in services and housing, is often higher. Even assuming a conservative 3% average inflation over those 35 years, the value of money is cut by more than half. That $830,000 in the future will only have the purchasing power of roughly $290,000 today. Now, apply the 4% rule, the standard safe withdrawal rate for retirement. 4% of that portfolio gives Sarah a retirement income of roughly $11,600 a year in today's purchasing power. That is less than $1,000 a month after working for 40 years. After doing everything right, after following the rules, Sarah will retire into poverty. She will not be traveling the world. She will be choosing between heating and eating. To actually maintain her current middle-class lifestyle in retirement, accounting for inflation, Sarah doesn't need $800,000. She needs roughly $3 to $4 million. To hit that number, she would need to save not $500 a month, but nearly $4,000 a month. That is 80% of her take-home pay. That is mathematically impossible. This is the silent crisis. The gap between the cost of a secure future and the wages of the present has become too wide to bridge with simple budgeting. But wait, it gets worse, because Sarah wants to buy a house. She is told that renting is throwing money away. So she looks at the median home price in her area, $500,000. She needs a 20% down payment to avoid punitive insurance fees, that is $100,000. If she saves that same $500 a month, ignoring any emergencies or car repairs, it will take her nearly 17 years just to save the down payment. But here is the cruelty of asset inflation. In 17 years, that house won't cost $500,000. At a historical appreciation rate of 4%, that same house will cost nearly $1 million. The goalpost moves faster than she can run. This is the definition of a rat race. It isn't just a metaphor for working hard. It is a mathematical description of a system where the required velocity to escape exceeds the maximum possible velocity of your income. Most people look at this math and they internalize the failure. They think, I just need a side hustle. I need to drive Ubers on the weekend. I need to stop buying avocado toast. They are trying to solve a structural equation with behavioral tweaks. You cannot budget your way out of a system where the cost of capital accumulation is rising faster than the value of labor. When you stare this reality in the face, the feeling isn't just frustration, it is hopelessness. It feels like the walls are closing in. It feels like you have been signed up for a game that is rigged to ensure you lose slowly over decades until you are too old to fight back. If you are feeling this pressure right now, hit the like button. Not because you like the struggle, but to let the algorithm know that this is a conversation we need to have. If you follow the standard path, go to school, get a job, save 10%, buy a house, retire at 65. The math guarantees that you will run out of money before you run out of life. The safe path is actually the most dangerous path you can take. So, is this it? Is the conclusion of this investigation that we are all doomed to servitude? No, because while Sarah is trapped in this equation, there are people with the exact same starting salary, the same background, the same obstacles, who have hacked the code. They aren't waiting until 65. They are walking away at 35 or 40. They didn't win the lottery. They didn't inherit millions. They simply realized that if the standard rules lead to a losing outcome, the only logical move is to stop playing by those rules. They found a backdoor in the system, a way to invert the math, weaponize the very mechanics we just exposed, and use them to build velocity instead of drag. The system was designed to keep you dependent, but a small group of people figured out that the design has a flaw. And if you know where to look, you can slip through the cracks and build a life of absolute freedom. It requires a radical shift in psychology. It requires unlearning everything you were taught about good financial habits. But the math works. And for the first time in this investigation, the numbers are going to be on your side. Here is how they do it. The realization that breaks the trap usually happens in a quiet moment. It is not a thunderclap, it is a subtle shift in perspective that renders the old rules obsolete. For me, it happened when I stopped asking, how can I earn more money? And started asking, who actually wins in this system? We established earlier that the game is rigged against labor and in favor of capital. We saw that productivity gains, the fruit of your hard work, are siphoned off to shareholders. We saw that inflation destroys savers while debt enslaves consumers. The revelation is brutally simple. You cannot win this game as a player, you must become the house. The small group of people who escaped the rat race early, the FIRE community, the digital nomads, the value investors, don't have higher IQs. They simply decided to switch sides. They stopped trying to be the best paid employee and started acting like the smallest possible institution. They realized that the system has a vulnerability. The same mechanics designed to trap you can be reversed to liberate you. The first key to the escape room is a concept called the gap. The system wants you to focus on your income. It wants you to define your worth by your salary. But the math of early retirement doesn't care how much you make. It only cares about the percentage of your income you keep. This is the simple math of early retirement popularized by researchers and early FIRE advocates. The formula is shocking in its simplicity. If you save 10% of your income, the standard advice, you have to work 9 years to buy 1 year of freedom. That is a 51-year career. That is the trap. But if you save 50% of your income, you work 1 year to buy 1 year of freedom. The timeline collapses. At a 50% savings rate, starting from zero, the math says you can retire in roughly 17 years. If you push that to 70%, you are free in under 10. Sarah, our example from before, was trapped because she was playing the 10% game. But what if she refused to play? This leads to the second and most powerful component of the escape. Owning the machine. Remember the shareholder primacy we discussed? The fact that corporations suppress wages to boost stock prices? As a worker, that is your nightmare. But as an investor, that is your payroll. The people who escape don't try to beat the stock market. They buy the entire market. They use low-cost index funds to purchase a slice of the global economy. By doing this, they position themselves on the receiving end of the wealth transfer. Every time a corporation raises prices, you profit. Every time a company automates a job to increase efficiency, you profit. Every time the government prints money and inflates asset prices, your assets inflate with them. You stop being the victim of capitalism and start being the beneficiary. The math behind this is the Trinity study. In 1998, 3 professors at Trinity University analyzed market data going back to 1926. They wanted to know, how much money do you actually need to never work again? They discovered the 4% rule. The data showed that if you have invested assets equal to 25 times your annual expenses, you can withdraw 4% of that portfolio every year, adjust for inflation, and have a 95 to 98% chance of your money lasting at least 30 years. In many cases, the portfolio actually grows. This turns the vague, impossible goal of millions of dollars into a concrete, achievable number. If you spend $40,000 a year, your freedom number is $1 million. Once you hit that number, your labor is optional. Your money is now working harder than you are. But here is the final piece of the puzzle. The accelerator that the wealthy use but rarely talk about. If the trap is high cost of living in major Western cities, if the housing market is the primary mechanism of wealth extraction, then the most logical move is to remove yourself from that market. This is called Geo-Arbitrage. It is the ultimate leverage. In a globalized world, you can earn in a strong currency like dollars, pounds, or euros, but spend in a weaker currency. Let us go back to Sarah. In Denver, her life cost $60,000 a year, forcing her to need a portfolio of $1.5 million to be free. That is a mountain to climb. But if Sarah takes her remote skills to a country with a lower cost of living, say Portugal, Thailand, or Colombia, her cost of living might drop to $25,000 a year for an even higher quality of life. Suddenly, her freedom number drops from 1.5 million to just $625,000. Consumerism. We will break down the exact investment strategies that turn the tide in your favor. If you are ready to stop being a resource for the system and start being the architect of your own life, then you are in the right place. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the next briefing. The doors to the cage are open. The math has shown you the way out. The only variable left in the equation is you. The system was designed to keep you working. Your job is to build a new system that sets you free.